the Dalemole Institute for Intelligence. And today, let me share my screen. I will, I thought, given that, oh, you need to give me rights to share my screen. Given that you are an AI center, to present our work and how AI is related to agriculture and food security, but mostly from an AI perspective to the extent I can. So yeah, let me share my screen. Okay. So while I was presenting, can you see my screen? I think you can. So my agenda for today is to provide an overview on how artificial intelligence can enable scientific discoveries for feeding the world in a changing climate. So I was thinking, what makes agriculture an interesting application domain for AI research, and which are the research challenges ahead? And I will attempt to answer both questions in the next half hour, but I'm not sure I have very complete answers. So I'm really asking you to think along and help me answer these questions and develop a research agenda for the years to come. Digitization of present promises to advance yields, to reduce waste, to lower supply chain costs, to match sustainability development goals. However, figuring out how to turn data into decisions is not always a straightforward process. And today,
Ioannis, I guess your connection is not very stable. We can barely hear you.
Yes. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry for that.
Oh, no, it's better.
Is it better? Okay, let me move a little bit. I hope it's better. Okay, so I was saying that more data are not necessarily bring more better decision making these days. A recent Nature Foods editorial made the point that we can do more with what we already have available. We do have computational power, we do have experience, and big data are already there for opening up opportunities to tackle food security problems in a more accurate and inclusive way. The key question is how to do this. And this is what I will try to answer together with you today. Let's go back about 20 years ago. At that time, there was starting from the remote sensing community, a whole a big new innovation that through remote sensing, image-based remote sensing, we can start detecting vegetation density, water deficit, and crop stress. So it started a new era for agriculture that is called now precision agriculture, at that time precision crop management. But due to the new sensors available and the new remote sensing infrastructure, we can have very detailed images from the sky of our fields and how our crops are growing. Then a second driver is undoubtedly the developments in artificial intelligence itself. So after the boom of AI in 2010 or so, there was a follow-up from the plant phenotyping community, and I'm sorry if ever was. I'm not sure. Do you hear me? You do,
yeah,
right?
yeah, all good. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, now, okay, sorry. So another driver was the whole boom of machine vision. And at some points in 2013-14, it was some people on the interface between machine vision and plant phenotyping who started sharing data for detecting plants and plant parts and so on. And this had an enormous impact on the in the agricultural community, because with time we have seen how this benchmark started improving and reached industrial levels. And today we have a series of machine vision applications in agri-food robotics. So what people are envisioning for tomorrow is the farm of the future, where we have several components at hand, weeding machines that can detect weeds and robotic actuators that actually remove them, optimal breeding with AI and robotics, pixel level farming, circularity, and we are going into an era where agriculture will be a hands-free activity. Of course, while we have all these components at hand, there are a lot of challenges in bringing this data together, because we have data in agriculture that span from the landscape level, from remote sensing down to genotypic data and everything in between, from soil, weather, management, tractor tracks, crop calendars, yields, and so on. So it is also a very broad domain in terms of scales and types of data involved. There are, in that sense, several challenges in agricultural AI, and these are related with the actual phenomena involved and the uncertainties and the cross-scale relationships between phenomena observed. It's common ground today that despite the increasing volume and variety of sources of data becoming available, more data are not necessarily helping us to improve our understanding, either for farmer level decision-making or for policy choices. Data in agricultural domains are too coarse, incomplete, highly noisy, with high spatial and temporal variability, this is really a very big problem in the domain. At the same time, we have several models available, not AI models, I mean theory-based or simulation-driven models that have reached their limits. Statistical models are unable to extrapolate outside their the data or the domain where they have been calibrated, and simulation-driven models are also excluding several factors because we don't know how certain interactions are happening in reality. So models exclude several factors at various scales, and that's why it's hard to be reused. At the same time, we have several case studies which create a lot of promise, but also it's very difficult to compare between those case studies. The agricultural domain is highly fragmented. And then if you also see the literature, we have a lot of applications which are really not comparable. Bringing it all together, where we stand today in terms of AI in agriculture is that on the one hand, we have a lot of success that has gone into the commercial, let's say, level with when it has to do with tasks related to pattern recognition, so detecting weeds or detecting diseases on leaves or reconstructing 3D structures of plants. But we have less success when it goes to systems understanding. And there is a lot of caution from the community against AI And on the one hand, there is the fear of missing out. But this was a recent paper from some colleagues that were looking at machine learning for crop yield forecasting, and the title was "A Powerful Tool, but No Surrogate for Science." So there are also a lot of people in agriculture that are afraid of AI that will come to take their jobs, and that's not only farmers, but also scientists. What is the way ahead? So the way ahead, in my opinion, is to enable new data-intensive scientific discoveries via artificial intelligence and digital twins that are able to learn from heterogeneous data at different spatial and temporal scales, encode prior knowledge into reusable models, but also make trustworthy estimates in new conditions. And the latter one is especially relevant when we are talking about climate change, because we know that due to climate shifts, the conditions will be changing and will be changing rapidly. And how to do that? In my opinion, we need to start by understanding the unique characteristics of agricultural systems and the data associated to those. So what is particular to agricultural systems data are the low fidelity of data, the scale interactions, the high uncertainty, the case fragmentation, the gaps into data, but also all the disciplinary silos, that the difficulty to link data between those, which are the drivers to match those characteristics with the AI toolkit and see if we can do something together. And if I attempt to do that, then matching it with the AI tools, I think that methods coming from AI, like learning from noisy data, but also others like simulation-assisted machine learning or reinforcement learning, can be really useful for building new AI data-driven systems that are able to produce actionable knowledge via digital twins in agriculture. And for me, two more are really key characteristics or key methods that match very well with the characteristics of agriculture. And one of them is explainability, because if we are to make choices about food, we need to be able to explain why we make those choices, but also multi-view learning. And multi-view learning for me is extremely crucial in this domain because of the partial views that we have from the different subsystems. So if we want to start really building holistic views about agricultural systems, there is no way that we will have data available that covers the whole spectrum of variability. We will always have partial views into this spectrum that involves genetics, management, and the environment. And well, walking on this way ahead, I will share with you a couple of case studies that I have been working with my students lately. And the first one is a case where we have been learning from noisy data and has to do with crop yield forecasting using machine learning and big data. The European yield forecasting system is a tool for agricultural policy and food security that gives advice to governments and policymakers, but also companies about yield forecasts in Europe. And they have this system in place for many years. And it's true that in the past decade or so, they have very small progress in terms of improving their forecasts. So they have an existing system in place that includes data from various sources, like weather monitoring, crop simulation, national yield statistics, remote sensing, and other statistical sources. And based on those, together with human expertise, they forecast yields and publish bulletins with suggestions and for policymakers. What we wanted to do is to see how this yield forecasting can be improved with AI. The current system makes forecasts at the national level, while what we wanted to investigate with my PhD student, Dilip Paudel, is how machine learning can be applied for doing regional level forecasting. And to that end, we developed a generic pipeline or methodology that is reusable across scales, across different crops, and across different regions. And we did that in an inclusive and explainable way with agronomic knowledge, with the experts from JRC and Wageningen University. And we developed a hybrid approach that mixes artificial intelligence with agronomic knowledge. And we have tested it in 35 case studies across 9 countries and 6 crops. This has been a very big success because at the national level, what we managed to do is to actually improve for the first time in 10 years, the national level predictions in 25 out of the 35 cases, while in the rest we had comparable results. But most importantly, the fact that we managed to do higher resolutions forecasts, which are allow to have more insightful predictions than the existing systems. This allowed to reduce uncertainties of the forecasts, but also to forecast the spatial differences within a country, which are very often cancelled out at the national level. And this has been very well welcomed by that community. And in my opinion, this is a way of not only working together, but also showcases that we can build robust AI systems that are not deployed in a single case study, but they can be working across different countries, locations, and even crops. In a second case study, we have been studying how to make use of simulations and existing process-based models. And we have developed a system that is a digital twin that is able to offer advice to farmers for fertilizing or not their pastures. We want to employ an AI model that is able to offer advice using minimal information compared to what is available on every farm. And here the most critical thing is that while on the one hand we don't have a lot of observation data, so it's impossible to build a data-driven model because observed data are not available, we do have well-calibrated models that are able to reproduce data and situations out of this, which look more or less how it is on the left. So with crop growth models, we can use as inputs weather, time series, and then we can produce as outputs the biomass of grass, for example. However, what we wanted to do is to actually transform this into an operational setting where the AI model will be able to get only a few inputs and only a fraction in terms of the temporal horizon of the data and make a prediction of the total biomass that happens 2 months in advance. So comparing with a crop growth model is not a good comparison because they have very different data inputs and outputs, but it's more about learning from simulations for building operational systems. And what we did is we built together with Ag Research in New Zealand a synthetic data set of 1.3 million simulations that emulate the pasture response to nitrogen in 8 diverse locations using historical weather data. Then we built an operational digital twin that estimates the nitrogen response in pastures without ever seeing the response of the location that it makes predictions. So we have been using, out of 8 locations, 7 for training and 1 for testing. And the results have been very, very promising, as you can see. For all locations, a tactical machine learning surrogate was able to estimate the nitrogen response rate with a margin less of 5 kilograms per kilogram of nitrogen applied, which was set as a threshold for using the method in practice. And that's something that we can do using only 4 weeks of weather information prior to fertilization, meaning we use in this model data that are globally available, or at least for New Zealand, they're everywhere available. We don't require any additional inputs in terms of sensors or measurements or analysis, and we can give a very good suggestion to the farmer if it's worth fertilizing or not. A very important lesson that we learned from this study is, again, that the domain knowledge is extremely useful, in this case, for setting up the problem, but most importantly, for understanding what is worthy, what is the challenge. So when we started building this, my personal view was, okay, we will just forecast the biomass, the yield, but that's not what is important for farmers. What is important is the relative gain compared to if you don't fertilize at all. And that's why we built a system that is not forecasting yield, but is forecasting the response of the pasture to nitrogen application, which is a relative factor compared to a baseline where there is no fertilization. And that was, in my opinion, what made this application really, really difficult, because that's even more a non-linear relationship. But also it's very interesting because we managed to go into a level of prediction which is actually very, very useful for farmers. Moving into a third case, another methodological contribution that we investigated last year is how to employ reinforcement learning for learning efficient nitrogen fertilization strategies. In that case, we built an agent that observes a simulation model that is called WOFOST, that grows wheat in the Netherlands, and experiments by applying nitrogen or not at different levels. And by these observations, it is rewarded, and based on that, it's learning. We compared such an agent against a dummy reactive agent that would just fill up the soil with nitrogen, what you see here in blue, and against the standard practice agent, what farmers would typically do, which is to apply nitrogen once and then side dress it a few weeks later, which is the orange. And on top, we see in this diagram the yield of the 3 agents for the 4 years in the test set, and in the bottom you see the amount of nitrogen used for fertilization. Overall, we observed that our agent, the red one, the reinforcement learning agent, was able to maintain high yields while it learns from past performance to reduce the use of fertilizer, and in some cases significantly compared to the standard practice. That's a very interesting pathway for future research that could allow us to build, to learn from experience, to learn from interacting with systems, and propose new strategies for tackling with climate change, for improving the sustainability of agricultural management in the short term. So, in my opinion, what we learned from this is that there is a huge potential in reinforcement learning for agricultural management, which remains to a great extent not explored. Bringing it all together, for enabling data-intensive discoveries to feed the world in a changing climate, we need to bring together data from different disciplines, from remote sensing to in situ sensing, data from surveys, from farm management systems, from breeding trials, that go across the whole continuum of genetics, management, and environment. And once we bring those into smart data observatories, then a new generation of AI, which is data-driven, will allow us to build digital twins that match the real world, and allow us to build very interesting and innovative applications for feeding the world in a changing climate. However, there are a couple of challenges when you see this landscape. One has to do with the fact that data across this continuum are highly noisy, they're autocorrelated. IID certainly does not hold, but also another factor is that due to the climate shifts, the distribution of data is changing, and unfortunately is changing fast. Another challenge is what I call the valley of death. We have really huge volumes of data coming from remote sensing, and it's very cheap, and we have very big volumes of breeding data. But what happens on the farm, in the field, in between, is something that we actually miss. And very few data are available in this range. So bringing it all together is very difficult, if not impossible. And also because, at least for arable farming, to have a full season of crop growth, you need an actual year. I don't think we can even have these full views across these all dimensions anytime soon, even if we have been starting collecting data immediately. This is why I argue that we need to put methodological advancements into practice, but also trigger new ways of learning from data where not all data are in place. We have what is called partial view learning, but how do we apply it in this case, and how do we validate it? It remains, in my opinion, a big challenge. So how to put together methodological advancements in AI together with new sensing technologies and application requirements is a challenge that eventually will shape a hybrid artificial intelligence domain that is able to learn from different explanatory factors and transfer the learned knowledge in new situations. But to do that, we need to start looking at the bigger picture, move away from pattern recognition only problems, and look into a more systems perspective that covers broader views in this data spectrum. Well, I have a question for you. Do you think I missed something in this vision? what is missing in your opinion? Anyone who would like to raise their hands? I see some smiles, but Lily, please go ahead. Please unmute yourself first.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I wonder if one of the things we're missing here is actually education between the machine learning practitioners and the agricultural experts. I see a lot of papers using machine learning in ways that are sometimes wrong, sometimes making mistakes. And I'm sure that if we create some amazing machine learning tools, they might not even work in the end.
That's a very good point. Yeah. I complain less about those kind of things, but you're right. Yes, that's a very good point. Yeah. Any other ideas or suggestions? Well, while you're thinking about it, I will tell you what I think this slide is missing, and then maybe we can have a more open discussion. So in my opinion, what we miss here is two things. One thing is domain knowledge and expertise. Data are not there. Systems are very complex to start learning only from data. So following a traditional AI approach, it's never going to work in this domain. There is no way there will be an ImageNet equivalent that will tell us all the story, and we will be able to develop AI models that learn both the structure and tune the parameters. We need to infuse as much as the more domain knowledge we can. That's why I'm talking about hybrid AI, but I think this is something that I didn't talk a lot about it, that we really need to have the different sources of knowledge. Either it comes from books, either it comes from equations, either it comes from practices, so different knowledge sources to fuse them into the process. If we don't incorporate domain knowledge effectively into AI, I don't think that a data-driven only approach will ever work. The second thing that I think this vision misses is the human in the loop. Especially when we look forwards into climate change, there are options to be made and choices to be made that go beyond pattern recognition. It goes beyond objective measures of success or reward for agents. And for that, we need to have also humans into the loop to think along and co-develop solutions. And this is probably what has been for many, many years already been named as the fourth paradigm in science. This is an emerging science era named the fourth paradigm for research by the Turing Award winner, Jim Gray, that goes beyond experimental and theoretical research and even beyond computational science into a new era that requires new tools, new techniques, and most importantly, new ways of working. Data-driven discoveries will be enabled by new data-intensive research collaborations that go beyond disciplinary boundaries and involve big data infrastructure, new sensing technologies, artificial intelligence and machine learning, but also a lot of collaborations, a lot of agronomers and farmers into the mix. In other words, I think we really need new collaborations for going to the next level. And with this, I would like to thank you very much, and apologies for broadcasting this from home and a little annoyance before. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for the nice presentation. Does anybody have any question?
Oh, I'm open for discussion, and any kind of feedback is very, very welcome. To be honest, I don't think I have answered. Let me stop sharing because I closed my presentation, but I didn't. I don't think I fully answered my questions from the beginning, but maybe I'm on the right track. So any feedback is very useful. Lily Bell.
Hi again. Just want to say thank you for the great presentation. It was really, really interesting and really, really useful. Yeah, I wonder, what do you think about, I really liked the way you spoke about how the actual challenges being faced was more in terms of needing to know how much nitrogen would affect the yield rather than the actual yield itself. I was wondering if you have worked much with this idea of counterfactual predictions. This way of predicting, maybe your yield will be low, but if you did this or if this happened, then you might reach a normal yield, something like this.
Yeah, no, we didn't do that, but that's something we really want to look at. So and I think this is a more general problem in this domain, that we tend to, including myself, we tend to take our case study and write a paper on it. Well, very often you need to really think more on how you formulate the problem. So formulating a problem as a simple regression, maybe it's not always the way to go, because what brings added value is not the prediction of the yield, but you need to think in a more complex way also for evaluating your system. And yeah, and counterfactual predictions is something that we could bring into the mix, of course.
Thank you.
Kenza.
Yes, hello. Thank you for your presentation. I had actually a question because you highlighted a gap between climate data, so all the meteorological data, and the actual yield data on the field. Could you tell me why there is this gap still, and what are the hindrances to fill this gap?
Why there is this gap? Because people don't have high resolution data of yields. So governments collect data at the regional level. Farmers maybe are collecting data at the farm level, not at the field level. So very few data exist that have field level ground truth data for several processes. Maybe big tractor companies that have appliances now have some of this data collected, but again, most of those are not shared, and it's hard to align them with all the other factors, right? So definitely there is a gap in the spatial and temporal representation of ground truth data. Yeah. And yeah, and on the second part of your question, if this gap is going to be filled, I really wonder. So it depends very much on if farmers would see an added value in doing that, because now who would collect this data if they don't bring any added value to their business? This is not entirely proven. So it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem. Huh? So we cannot build better AI systems without ground truth data, and people don't collect ground truth data because they don't see any added value from that. Huh? So yeah, I don't know if this covers all the aspects of your question, but I think that's the case. And even if certain types of data or observations at the field level are available, there are so many others which are not. So we don't, even if we have yields, we don't have very precise records of management. We don't have very precise records of which cultivars, the genetics of the seeds that have been used, and so on. So this is the reality, I would say, today. A lot of things are changing, and they're changing fast, but we're not there yet. And in contrast with other domains, there are no incentives for doing so. So who pays for this cost? Huh? So if you compare it, for example, with the biomedical domain, then yeah, hospitals have to have records of patients, but farmers don't need to have records of individual fields or subplots, or individual animals or so. Yeah. Shall we go to the next one, Kenza? What do you think? Mena, please.
Yeah, thanks for the great talk. So in regard to your last point about like hybrid systems and human in the loop and so on, I was wondering whether you think it will be more a manual process with a machine in the loop, or more automatic process with a human in the loop?
I think that's a very good question. Thanks a lot. I think it depends a little bit on the problem we are discussing about. So if it is about agri-food, robotics, or doing or sorting, I don't know, in conveyor belts, sorting apples and things like that, then it's more like machines with human in the loop. If we're talking about policy choices, if we're talking about preparing for a changing climate, then I think it will be humans with a machine in the loop, with a little bit of help from AI.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Matteo, you're next.
Okay, well, thanks again for the great talk already. Thank you, but I really enjoyed it. I wanted to ask you, I mean, you talked a lot about these notorious GEM interaction, right? Genetics, environment, and management. And you presented works that address some, like, for example, the large scale year forecasting work that you talked about. I think it tackles genetics and environment. So you have different cultivars, and you try to predict their yield in different environmental conditions. Similarly, not similarly, but like, taking a different view, your reinforcement learning work with CropGym talks about management and environment, but the genetic component is missing. And so it seems that like these interaction is really, this complex interaction is really what we want to model. So capturing in one simulator or digital twin, like the complexity of genomics, management, and environment. And I was wondering, like, it seems that it's very hard to do that. And like, what would be the way forward? Are there any efforts in this sense? Is a problem that is hopeless to tackle? What's your opinion on that?
I definitely don't think it's hopeless. Thanks for the question, and you're right in your observation that also what I have been doing and what I think most of the people have been doing is indeed this limited only interactions. And the truth is that we're talking, I don't think it's hopeless. I don't think it's hopeless, but I do think it's extremely difficult. So even setting up this kind of experiments, it requires really a lot of efforts, new funding just for bringing the data together and the expertise together, not only the data, but also the expertise about these different types of interactions. So, and that's something that you see in several papers that say, okay, with remote sensing, we can detect yields, and then we have an R-square of 0.8, but we know nothing about genetics. And then they say, okay, you know, in another paper, we do statistics, we know nothing about this, but, or another, they follow more of an econometric approach. And that's why I think from an AI perspective, I think AI agriculture brings a very interesting example for partial view learning, because we don't know what is this holistic model. We know parts, or we have analyzed parts or certain interactions, but the whole model that we're trying to build, we don't know how it looks like. So when I see how the machine vision community approaches partial view learning, says, okay, I have different photographs of a table and I see 3 legs, my model can infer that there is a 4th leg. That's true, but somehow that's very, there is an archetype of what a table is. Yeah, there is no archetype what a food system is and what are all these interactions. And this is why, in my opinion, we need to do this not from an AI perspective only, not from a data-driven perspective, but we need to build into whatever kind of system we're building there as much as we can from what we already know, and start filling in the gaps for reducing uncertainties and understanding better the interactions that we don't know. And truth, in my opinion, is that there are several interactions in nature or phenomena that we really don't know how they actually happen, or we know how to explain them at certain scales in terms of space or time, but we don't know how they are actually caused or how they operate at different scales. So we don't know which genes have certain effects in crop growth and how they affect certain phenotypic behaviors. So that is, in my opinion, a very, very difficult problem. Huh? But I don't have a very good answer, I'm afraid, to tell you we should do this. But I think it's definitely a very interesting direction for AI research.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, Lilibel, you have
another one. Sorry. Yeah, I really like your message how domain knowledge is so important and should really be almost the focus of the way you frame your problem. I think this is true for a lot of fields, but especially for this. And I was wondering if you had any suggestions, if you're a machine learning researcher looking to do some work in this field. Do you have some ideas for some best practices or some some ideas for someone to get, integrate more domain knowledge into their work?
Well, on the one hand, from time to time, there are various challenges that appear, and that could be a good way to start. But in my opinion, what it would work for me is to find someone who is an agronomer or an ecologist and start working with them, because they will bring you data, but also they will bring you the right problems to solve. Huh? And well, this is also a necessity that I see, or what happened, for example, with this plant phenotyping example that I think I didn't explain it very well because that phone was ringing. But what happened there is that when the whole machine vision boom was happening, there were a couple of people who said, okay, this works very well for plant phenotyping. So they made available data and they made available a problem formulation with benchmarks. And then we saw all these acceleration and improvements of this benchmark, and now it's a standard practice for plant phenotyping to use machine vision and so on. And all this happened very fast in less than 10 years. But building this first benchmark was a challenge. And that's something we cannot do as AI scientists alone. And I'm pushing a lot my colleagues in Wageningen University and in agronomic institutes to start sharing data, but also start building this very good practice we have in the machine learning community of benchmarking. Because, and this has to do with how science works. Always their science was more empirical, and having a case study is enough for them. But we have a different approach there. Huh? And yeah, I think that's something that maybe it's very difficult to solve on your own. But if you have a good partner in an agronomic institute or an ecological department, then you can start reaching out both to the right problems and the right data.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I hope that in the next few years there will be more open and standard benchmarks for this kind of, let's say, applications. To give you an example, I have been working with breeding companies. There is no way their data can be publicly available. Crop yields are also very sensitive. There are a lot of privacy issues involved there. Huh? So even ecological data from crowdsourced platforms, when they are shared in public platforms in the Netherlands, they are spatially obfuscated so that you don't know where exactly have been collected by whom, because it's a matter of privacy. So there are indeed really a lot of problems there, huh? To be solved, to move, and I think we need to address some of those fast, because we need to not lose momentum. Huh?
Well, I would like to thank you for the presentation, for answering all our questions. I would have many others, but I think we're running out of time. So in this case, I would like to thank again the speaker and remind everybody in the audience that our next session will happen in 2 weeks from now. We will be hearing from Dr. Duncan Watson-Parris about accelerating climate science with machine learning, how we can model climate with artificial intelligence. That being said, thank you very much all for being here, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next editions.
Thank you too.
Thanks a lot.
For the nice discussion.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thanks.